Hi everyone, my name is Jasmine Rivera and I'm the founder of Graciously Defined and I'm here to tell you a little bit about my story and how Graciously Defined even came to be about. So, my story is very interesting. I think I haven't heard anything like it before and I'm pretty sure there's people out there who have actually encountered the same thing, which is why I wanted to get on here and even share my story because I think it's so important that everybody shares their story on how they found God in the midst of the craziness, right? So I want to say about 6 years ago, I quit my job, right? And I thought it was utterly insane, but God asked me to quit my job. And in the beginning, I was like, excuse me? Like, there are so many things going on in my life. And I wasn't sure. I was sure, but I was scared, really. Because it was like, life is going to still life. Okay, the bills still need to be paid, things still need to be done. And I was just expecting God to work a miracles and I would get another job and whatnot, but it didn't work like that. At the end of the day, I did obey. I quit my job. And as soon as I quit my job, I felt like there was this weight that lifted off of my shoulders because I didn't have to perform and try to be something that I wasn't anymore. And it just felt so relieving. So relieving. Um, but also afterwards, he told me to build a business. Now, I have been a graphic designer for 8 years of my life, right? And so I thought that I was gonna be building a graphic design business. And that was something that I had always hoped for. It was something that I had always dreamed for. And it was really all that I was good at, really. And I had spent so many years in this field and I have cultivated so many skills. And, you know, God just, the more I built it, the more I tried to become this graphic design studio that honored God and all of that stuff. Like it just felt like I was just doing the same thing that everybody else was doing, right? Um, I always wanted to be different, and because I am different, right? Never understood that, right? And um, God then, as things started to like not work, right? Um, I had clients that would literally in the middle of a project cancel, or I would try to, um, I would try to establish new things, and just didn't work right. And so I had to take a step back and just be like, all right, God, what is it that you want me to do? Because I had gotten to the point where I was just like, this isn't working. This isn't working. I'm not getting anything out of it. There was no heart for it anymore. That was another thing. There was no heart for it. In my other job, I was a graphic designer as well. And there was just like, after 3 years of being there, I didn't want to be there anymore because it was like graphic designing became a burden. And that is just, wow. That's like so hard for me to even say and put language into. But the truth of the matter is, graphic designing, my passion, what I really, really loved at one point in my life, became a burden. And I realized that I had to move forward. So God literally said, okay, I want you to work on your ministry. I had been working on a ministry on the sidelines, and I thought it was just going to be for women that had experienced trauma in their life, as I have also experienced trauma in my own life. And I thought I would just be helping people navigate that. But then I realized there are so many people out there that do that as well, right? Okay. Start working on my ministry. It's been years now. I've been establishing foundations, doing that, right? And I think the interesting part about starting Graciously Defined was that I was working from home and I was realizing and noticing some patterns, right? I would start a task and then I would completely forget that task and then go to another task because that task was boring me. So I would go to the other task and that would be a new sense of dopamine. And then that task would never get finished. But this task was like the highlight of my life. I needed this. Like, I need to do this because it was going to be amazing. And then I never finished it. And then I would jump to the other one. And then, in that, it was just like I felt like I was going in circles of getting absolutely nothing done, feeling the shame of not getting anywhere. Years would go by, and it was just like, what am I actually building here? Am I really building anything? Is it like what is this, right? And I started to get anxiety. I started forgetting so much more. I started feeling so disconnected, and I generally didn't know what to do. And I was asking myself questions like, "What is wrong with you? Like, there might deeply be something wrong with me." Like, I started to open my mind more to realizing something's wrong here, right? And then I thought it was very interesting because there was one day that I was just like, you know what we do to cope? We scroll. So I'm scrolling and I'm scrolling, I'm scrolling, and I keep seeing these ADHD videos pop up on my feed, and I'm like, okay, I have never researched anything on ADHD. I had never had a conversation with anybody. I never clicked on an ad. I never so there was no reason for this to be on my algorithm. Period. But it was suddenly on my algorithm, and at first I would just skip over it, like no big deal, whatever. And then I would actually like pay attention and listen to it. And then when I started to listen to it, I realized, why is this video validating the very same things that I go through? And why is it that every single video that now that I pay attention to is literally affirming everything that I go through? And then I had a moment in my life where I just realized, and it gnawed at me, and it gnawed at me, and it started to like annoy me, and I was just like, okay, well, I don't have insurance at this time to even go and try to get this diagnosis, go see what's wrong with me, whatever, like. And I finally got to a place where I was just like, I did exactly just that. I just sighed. And I was just so frustrated and overwhelmed and mad. And I remember asking God, I hit my knees and I asked God, Father, if you knew me and you formed me in my mother's womb, do I have ADHD? And I think the next day he literally said yes. And I remember feeling like a missing piece in my life had I had been searching for my entire life had finally just clicked. And yet at the same time there was this grief, and I grieved. And the crazy thing is that within a few weeks I realized, after him confirming that I had ADHD, I started seeing more videos. Like, I felt like there was still something missing. Like, there was a missing piece. Like, yes, I had finally come to myself, but now there's something even deeper missing, right? And I was just like, okay, am I going crazy? Like, what is this odd feeling? Whatever, right? Okay. Continue doing more research. I'm going into the whole ADHD thing because now I want to understand myself. I want to understand why is it that I do certain things. Like, um, is there resources out there that would actually help me for what I'm actually looking for, right? Needless to say, I didn't find any. But what I did find was a whole bunch of videos about how um, ADHD can cross with other mental health diagnoses, right? And what I found was every single video that mentioned ADHD and autism together made more sense to me. It just like I felt like not only was I validated, but I had finally come into alignment with myself. And it felt like for so many years I was lost. And now I'm found, and that's literally the only way to even explain how that felt, right? And so um I again asked God, do I have autism, right? And he literally gave me three dreams and three confirmations on the fact that I had autism. So yes. Um so essentially I was living with undiagnosed ADHD for 32 years of my life, as now I am 33. And if I'm honest, when I first discovered that I had ADHD, I had grieved. But I think when I discovered that I had autism on top of that, I grieved to a point that it was just like, why didn't anybody tell me? Why didn't anybody kind of like search and find answers and like things like that? But then I started to connect the dots, right? I started to realize there are many things that, the older generation in many cultures. I'm Latina, so um, they don't view mental health as a thing. um, some of them very much dismiss it. So I started to realize, maybe there's shame underneath all of this. Maybe there's just things that nobody wanted to talk about, or even back then how really they didn't have diagnoses for all of this, right? They just kind of threw it under the rug, was like, okay, whatever, the kids will be fine, and that's it. They kind of just dealt with it. But for me, it was just like something could have been done, right? And so I had to go through that grief, and I think everybody goes through that grief. But now having the language for the experience didn't just help me understand myself. I want to say that it really saved me. It saved me because for so many years I never felt like I belonged. I never felt like I was safe anywhere. I never felt like um, I was accepted. I always felt like I was misunderstood. Like the earth was not my home. And it was the weirdest feeling of life. Never understood why earth never could feel like home when it really should have, right? Um, I think not only did it save me, but it also became part of my calling, right? And that's how graciously defined um, really became a thing after I aligned with myself and became more aware of the language and the things that were going on inside of me, right? I came into alignment with who I am, right? But the crazy thing is, after learning, right, um, I started to research podcasts, blogs, different things out there, right? And I started to notice this gap. And there's two gaps that I noticed. There's one in the world and there's one in the church, right? In the world, every single um, podcast or blog or social media feed or group that I would put myself in, there was so much fear, there was so much shame, there was so much guilt, there was so much insecurity, there was so much doubt, there was so much stuff that people were carrying. And I just found it like a burden. Like it hit me. Like there are people out here genuinely hurting, genuinely trying to just survive instead of like actually thriving because God didn't call us to survive. Okay, the best way I can put that is um the Israelites in the wilderness going in circles. They were surviving. They had literally been in slavery for so long in their life in Egypt, and then all of a sudden they're in the wilderness and God is promising them better, but they can't get to better because they're stuck in survival mode because that's all they've known all their lives. So now they're in the wilderness and Moses is desperately trying to help them, transition, and they can't transition because they're stuck. And I feel like there's so many of us. There's so many people out there with autism, ADHD, um, ADHD, neurodivergence, period, and you're out there and um you're just surviving. You're in the trenches and you're sitting there like, what is wrong with me? You're stuck in this in between. At the end of the day, for me, autism and ADHD, right? There's two different nervous systems, right? So your ADHD is like doing one thing while your autism is doing a totally different thing. And I guess the best way that I could say this is, you know, your ADHD sometimes, like an example is um the one that I usually use all the time just makes sense to me. Your ADHD sometimes when I go outside, right? I want to do things. I want to go and be myself. I want to go and enjoy myself, be around people and all of that stuff, right? Or just be outside with people, whatever, right? But then your autism is like, girl, why are you out here? It is hot. It is uncomfortable. You look cute, but my skin's prickly and I'm sweating. It's disgusting. And there's too many people around. There's too many feelings. You keep staring at everybody else. You have anxiety. We have anxiety. Why are we out here? So now we're in the middle. Like there's autism, ADHD, autism, and now you're in the middle going. What's wrong with me? Why can't I be normal? Why can't this just work? Why am I? Why is there always a why? Right? And I realized there are so many of us out there that are doing the same thing, and we're going in circles, like the Israelites in the wilderness. We're just going in circles. We're just trying to navigate life. We're just trying to survive. We're just trying to go forward in our life, and we're just sitting here going, "Why is it so hard? Why is it like we're stuck in this never-ending um, negativity cycle of like, when is this ever going to get easier?" And that's what I noticed in the world, but in the church is what I've noticed is the gap is there is nothing to help us. I don't think, or from what I've seen and researched in the United States, anyways, I'm not talking about the UK because I think, yeah, in the United States, churches do not cater to neurodivergence because they don't understand. And they just think that autism is just one thing and it's mostly sensory. And on top of that, there is no there is no education on autism, neurodivergence, not autism, just neurodivergence periods and spiritual gifts. There is no education on our nervous systems and how to navigate that with God in the middle instead of us in the middle sitting there trying to figure it out on our own. There is no um, education on how to discern the Bible and discern church sermons according to the way we think and not what everybody else thinks, right? Because when a church is sitting there, for example, saying, "Oh, well, you can't do this, that, or that because it's a sin," but then literally that is our daily experience and the struggle that we go through in our minds every single day. How is that a sin? Now you're basically calling us a sinner, and that's how we feel. There's there's a huge gap between the world and the church for us in neurodivergence. And so ultimately, what graciously defined is one, it's it's education on everything that I just said that the the church is missing. But not just that, right? It's community. It's a place where we are all coming together as the body of Christ with ADHD, right? Um, and we're helping each other. We're supporting each other. We're learning. We're growing. We're becoming more than what just the world thinks that we can't. Or we're becoming more than a label, right? Because ADHD really doesn't define us. What defines us is grace. It's God's grace, hence graciously defined. I am graciously defined because I am defined by God's grace. I was created by God's grace. His grace is what propels me to move forward in everyday life. So, what I didn't touch on in the beginning was when I quit my job, right, about 6 years ago, not only did I start building a business, and but I also healed myself. Well, I partnered with God to heal myself and a therapist. I found healing in the midst of years and years and years of shame and guilt and pain of stuff that I never understood. All right. And that's what I want to be able to provide for women like us. I want to be able to create a community, a safe place where we all can feel like we can share our problems, but we can learn together how to move forward from those problems, right? I don't want to keep you stuck in that same circle. I want to be able to provide a new path for you to branch out, spread your wings, become who you are, and change the world. I feel like nobody has provided that pathway and nobody has filled that gap. And that's what graciously defined is. I want that in the end, you know that you are graciously defined because you are ultimately reconnecting with yourself. I just recently did a podcast interview with a an ADHD podcast. It was called ADHD Alchemy, and you'll be seeing that soon. But something that was interesting that I touched on was how most of the women that I have talked to already in my market research, they always touch on some form of tension and resistance, right? I feel like this is what I said personally too, as well, is there's this tension of yourself and then the late diagnosis, right? Or the new diagnosis, whatever the case may be. And you're butting heads. You're fighting with each other. And what I ultimately want to show people is that you don't have to keep doing this. You have to keep white knuckling each other, fighting each other, and like beating each other up in this ring. You can learn how to connect. You can learn how to face yourself. You can learn how to just be willing and open to be like, I'm here and she's here, but now we can hold hands. Oh, that was retarded, but whatever. Now we can hold hands and learn each other, understand each other, love each other. And in the end, you'll understand that you're both graciously defined. And when I mean both, I mean you and your inner child, you and that trauma, you and the woman who learned how to survive versus the new woman that wants to learn how to thrive. You both can hold hands and you can connect and you can become one and align with who you are at the end of the day. And that's what graciously defined is. So if anything that I just spoke about may have resonated with you or um, made you feel like maybe this is something that you want to be a part of, there's going to be some links below in the description. And I'm going to invite you to our Facebook group. And in there, we're going to have community. And I'm still building. So, bear with me. Give me grace. But I'm still building this community. I do plan on having weekly lives, um, devotionals. There's going to be resources and prophetic messages for the prophetic spiritual gifts. There's going to be knowledge about neurodivergence and faith. Ultimately, I want to build a bridge so that we can step forward in our lives and actually thrive and not just survive. So, if you're interested, click on the link below and I'll see you there. I can't wait to meet you. Thanks for joining in.